Hello, lovelies, and welcome back to the Cognitive Collective, where curious minds come together to explore growth, wellness, education, entrepreneurship, and the conversations that shape the way that we think, learn, and live. I'm your host, Krista Kelly, and I'm so glad that you're back. I wanted to start today's podcast with a question. When was the last time somebody actually taught you how to think? Not what to think, not what to memorize, not what would be best on a test, but how to actually approach a problem that you've never seen before. How to evaluate information, how to recognize your own bias, how to adapt when an answer isn't obvious. For many of us, that answer is never. But that's exactly what we're going to talk about today is how we think and why we've maybe never been taught to think. So just think about your school experience. Let's just go way back. For a lot of us, that's way, way back. But how many times were you told to just memorize vocabulary words, multiplication tables? Remember that? Oh my gosh. Historical dates, because it's so important in today's society, right? We got to memorize all the dates. Periodic table. My sister probably could do that still today because she's a chem major, but the parts of the cell, oh my gosh, remember mitochondria, nucleus, the rough and smooth, what are they? I don't even know. Y'all will let me know. But all of that being said, I kind of want to ask, how much of that information can you still recall today? I mean, I did a little bit with you guys just now, right? But the goal wasn't even about learning. It was often just to pass a test. And that's honestly why I struggle with the current way, that we're teaching our kids is because just that. It's all about standardized testing, right? It's all about getting the numbers, getting all the data that we need to get funding or whatever it is. So I do want to differentiate the knowledge versus thinking. So knowledge is obviously what we've kind of already memorized, right? Our knowledge of the cell, if we still know those things, our knowledge of the periodic table, our knowledge of our historical dates, our knowledge on cooking, cleaning, driving, all of that is knowledge. But thinking is utilizing our cognitive skills to then either acquire knowledge or utilize the knowledge that we already have, or sometimes both, right? Sometimes we can utilize those skills to answer a question that we may not know using past information, and then using our skills to maybe acquire new knowledge or think of a way to solve a problem using both, right? New knowledge and old knowledge. I feel like that's a huge distinction when we're talking about how to think. A lot of people are just oh, well, I have all of this knowledge, and so I know how to pull that from my knowledge bank or my long-term memory, and I can utilize that. Okay, but that's not really thinking. Are you using a cognitive skill to recall the facts? Sure. And that's great. We love that. That's an important skill. I don't want to disregard that. It is an important skill. But that's not really thinking. Thinking is what you do when you don't know something. And a lot of the times, a lot of the kids that I work with today just give up. They're like, well, I don't know. So there's that. And I'm like, okay, but how do we figure it out? I don't know. I'll just ask somebody. Okay. There's ways to acquire knowledge on your own. I think actually, I don't know if I should even say this on a podcast, but there was another day or a day a few weeks ago that I was actually really annoyed with some of my colleagues of like not, I don't know. I don't want to be too specific because I don't want anybody to be like, oh, she's talking about me. But they were like asking a bunch of questions that to me, you could have gotten that knowledge from yourself if you just use some critical thinking skills. You didn't need to ask all of those arbitrary questions. I don't know. Yeah. So that's a really big pet peeve of mine. But I do want to point out that this is coming from research. There's an educational psychologist, Benjamin Bloom, and he developed basically a taxonomy of cognitive skills that progresses from remembering and understanding to actually applying, analyzing, evaluating, and even creating. The higher order thinking involves using knowledge in new and unfamiliar ways. So you're utilizing those skills in a higher thinking ability, rather than just simply recalling a bunch of facts. So I think it's really, really good to understand that this is coming from actual evidence and actual educational psychology. But basically, you remember, you understand, right? I remember this thing. I understand it. I'm going to apply it. I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to evaluate it. And then I might even be able to create something new from that, right? It's, yes, memorization is part of it, but it's only the first part. It's not the actual destination of thinking, right? Yes, you are utilizing some knowledge, but when we're thinking, we're utilizing so much more and creating something new and getting deeper knowledge and deeper meaning from that one piece of fact that you just pulled from your long-term memory. Does that make sense? Hopefully that does. So I thought that was a good way to start, but let's get into like how our brain is designed to actually solve problems, because it is designed that way, and which is really truly why we have survived this long, because we have problem solved. And we were able to evolve from that. So one of my favorite things about cognitive training, is watching somebody actually tackle a problem that they've never seen before. You can sometimes literally see the gears going round and round and round in their brain. And I absolutely love that because it shows me that they're actually utilizing some higher thinking ability and taking in that information, not just, in one ear, out the other, but taking it in, analyzing it, understanding it, trying to apply it, maybe even trying to create something new that's never been done before. Because it's not necessarily that like I care if they get the right answer. It's truly because I get to watch how they actually think. And I love that about being a cognitive trainer, because you get to witness somebody thinking in a new way, and then their light switch turn on when it happens. And like I said, it's not necessarily like a right or wrong answer. It's how are you able to think? And I love that because I know how I'm thinking. One of my like biggest pet peeves in my master's program is that I know what I'm thinking, right? So like when the professor is talking about a topic of social work, I know what I'm thinking. I know my experiences as a social worker, but I don't know what others are thinking. I don't know what their experiences are. And when I'm in a room full of individuals that are supposed to be other social workers being silent, and we're not having deeper, meaningful conversations or exploring each other's experiences together, that's so hard. It's so hard for me to, one, stay engaged and two, learn anything. Like what am I supposed to learn from just me talking or the same person saying the same thing over and over and over again? That's not how we learn. But again, I do actually have to fault it to our educational system because it just did not teach us how to truly think and solve problems. But I do want to go a little bit deeper into what I just said about how our brain is actually designed to solve problems. Some people just kind of jump in, right? You give them a math problem and they're like, okay, I got this. Some people freeze and they're like, okay, what do I do first? Like there's that step, that chronological kind of order where they kind of get stuck. Some people overthink and they start asking additional questions of like, what do you actually want from me? And I'm definitely at fault for that because of my neurodiverse brain. Sometimes I'm like, what are you asking me? I've said this before, but I truly, truly dislike the phrase tell me more coming from a social worker and coming from somebody that has had years and years of therapy. I absolutely hate when somebody says, tell me more. What do you mean tell you more? What do you want from me? So I overthink all the time. And then some people create strategies. They're like, hey, okay, I don't know this answer right off the top of my head. How do I get there? And that process tells you much more than whether they get like the right answer or not, right? That process of, okay, how are they going to get to an answer? It doesn't have to be the right answer, but how are they getting to an answer? That's why I love when I'm working with kids to ask them why, like, or how did you get there? Not why, but how did you get there? And I always have to, the thing is when I ask kids that, I always have to preface by saying, you're not wrong, but tell me how you got there. Because 9 times out of 10, when I say, how'd you get there? They're like, oh, it's the wrong answer. And they'll change their answer. And I'm like, whoa, backtrack. wait. I never said it was wrong. But again, our education system has literally taught us that there's only one right answer to everything. And if you're questioned, that means you're wrong. That's not the truth though. Like that's not how that works. Just because you're questioned doesn't mean that you're wrong. And so people get defensive. They're like, oh, I'm wrong. And they have to change their answer. And it's like, pause. Let's just have a conversation about what you just said. It's not that it's wrong. I don't know if it's right or wrong. You know what I mean? But it's like, I want to know what your thought process was because it tells me so much more about your cognitive ability or your intelligence or your capability than a right answer or an answer that has been shown to us a million times, right? Like when I was interviewing for the internship that I have for my company, that's what I prefaced by saying. I was like, yes, these are kind of like interviewee questions, but there's no right or wrong answer. I'm not looking for a specific answer. I think the actual conversation, the back and forth that I'm having with you tells me so much more about you and your capabilities, and your passion and your ambition than it does, are you giving me the correct interviewee answer? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. But there is some evidence about this. So executive functions are a set of cognitive processes that help us plan, regulate attention, hold information in our mind, switch between ideas, inhibit impulsive responses, and work towards goals. So researchers, wow, can't talk. Researchers such as Adele Diamond have shown that these skills are foundational for learning, self-regulation, and adapting to new situations. I think the adapting to new situations is the most powerful part to me. So a lot of you guys know that I am still currently in a master's program, in a master's program for social work. And I graduate in December of this year. So one of the biggest things that I have been really, really trying to instill in the people that I'm working with and working for is having them adapt to new situations, because that really truly builds resilience. And I think we did touch on resilience a little bit in the first episode, but and I'm sure we'll probably do a whole episode on resilience, because I feel so passionate about building resilience in individuals. But the way that we are able to self-regulate, learn from previous mistakes, because remember, success, we don't learn from our success, we learn from our failure. People just really truly need to understand that and keep reminding yourself that we do not learn from success. You learn from failure. This was a mistake. This was a failure. How do I take that information? Remember, take it, apply it, analyze it, evaluate it, and then create something new. How do I take that information and then create something new to get a different outcome, right? Hey guys, if you're looking for a community built around growth, learning, entrepreneurship, and wellness, the Cognitive Collective is currently being developed right here in San Antonio, Texas. Follow along as we build something very special. Oh, in my master's program. So I'm working with kids, and one of the things, I have a hair. Okay, there we go. One of my kids, you could, for those of you that don't know, I'm super pattern oriented. Like when I look at people, I watch their patterns. I watch the way that they move, the face expressions, their body language, the way they interact, their tone, their diction, all of those things. And it tells me so much more about a person and what they're thinking internally, rather than what they're saying or doing externally, if that makes sense. So I saw this little girl on the playground, and she, it was like a kind of ninja warrior type playground, which is really cool. I love those. My sensory loving brain and body love those things. But I could tell that she really wanted to do this specific obstacle course, and it was actually pretty challenging for a child, to be honest. And I could see in her face, like she really wanted to do it, but she was scared. Her fear was getting in the way of her doing it, right? And all I did was I stood there and I encouraged her. I was like, you got this. I'm right here. You're not going to fall. And if you do, I got you. But then this is the thing. She couldn't go across the, not that she couldn't, but it was hard for her to go across the obstacle course in the way that it's meant for you to go across, if that makes sense. So it's meant for you to walk along the ropes, and like there's also ropes on the top, on the sides for you to hold on. And it was hard for her to do it like that. So what I saw her doing is those gears started to turn. She's looking, she's thinking. And again, I'm right there and I'm encouraging her, I'm smiling, I'm giving her a bunch of support. And she goes, "Okay, I'm going to sit down." It's like, "Okay, yeah, sit down," and kind of just scoot along, right? And I helped her to like kind of figure it out. She was like, "Okay, I'm going to sit down." I was like, "Okay, move your feet first." So her feet went first and then her behind, then feet behind, right? And she kind of just scooted along and she made it through the obstacle course. Was it the way that it was supposed or like I got made to be? No, but she still did it, right? Next time, she's probably going to be able to stand and do it, right? Building resilience and adapting to those new situations, learning from what you've maybe seen or what you think should be done, and then regulating yourself, having, especially for kids, having a supportive adult that knows how to self regulate, that has done the work themselves to then help with mirror neurons, the child in front of them, to then self regulate and adapt to the new situation. She had never done that obstacle course before, but she adapted because one, she was kind of working it out while she was going. Two, she was able to self regulate the fear and the anxiety because I was there supporting her. And then we adapted by creating a new way of doing it. That is how we think. That is how we cultivate a mind that thinks, that doesn't just memorize things, that doesn't just do things that they're told, that actually thinks. And I think that is so freaking powerful. And I love it so much. So, going a little bit further in that, executive function is literal everyday thinking. So, basically breaking down each skill, working memory, holding information, but utilizing the information as well, or manipulating the information. So, like mental math, right? If I tell you to add 27 plus 56, you're one, needing to hold those numbers in your short term memory. And your working memory helps you manipulate those numbers to give me the answer. Following directions. If I told you to walk north for 5 blocks and then take a right and walk 5 more blocks and then go south 10 blocks, right? Whatever the directions are, remembering it, but then also using the information. Remembering a conversation is definitely working memory. Cooking, remembering a recipe and actually utilizing that information to do the task. That's working memory. Driving is a huge one, especially in San Antonio. Yes, driving. I don't think I need to explain that one further. Some people don't even have the knowledge to drive, but they still do it. Another skill is cognitive flexibility. This one I love. It's changing your approach when something isn't working, which may be a different way of explaining cognitive flexibility. For like my interns, when I explain it to them, it's more so switching tasks like quickly. So if I say to do something and then 5 seconds later I tell you to do something else, switching and doing something else, that's your cognitive flexibility. But in regards to thinking and utilizing our executive function, cognitive flexibility can also be changing your approach when it's not working, right? How are you going to sit there and dwell on the fact that it's not working? Like if you're trying to open one of those impossible boxes, right? If your approach isn't working, are you going to continue to do the same thing? Or are you going to change your approach? Changing your approach is your ability to be cognitively flexible. Yeah. Or like, do you stop and get frustrated, right? That's not being able to be cognitively flexible. Um, your inhibition control, like your impulse control, um, waiting patiently, thinking before you speak, stopping yourself from, Googling or using like an AI, which everybody wants to do right away. Stopping yourself from doing that and just let's think. Let's use our skills, right? Planning is a good one. So breaking larger goals into smaller steps. The planner I love, and people know that I love this planner, is the Law of Attraction Planner. Um, it helps you break down your really large goals into smaller, more attainable steps, which I love. Self-monitoring. That's a lot of introspection of, am I distracted? Am I being emotional right now? What is that emotion that I'm feeling? Do I need a break? Do I need water? What is my need right now? Being a little introspective and recognizing those bodily cues, but also your brain's cues, because your brain is very smart. It'll tell you if something is wrong. Research suggests that executive function skills are stronger predictors of many life outcomes than AI. Sorry, not AI. let me restart that. Research suggests that executive function skills are stronger predictors of many life outcomes than IQ alone. And in some contexts, because they influence how effectively people use their abilities in everyday situations. So you can have a really high IQ, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your executive function is able to utilize effectively utilize a multitude of skills while you're doing a situation, like whatever the situation may be, right? So I think that's really important, and we can definitely dive into that in a later episode. Thinking as a skill. So thinking is truly a skill. I truly believe. We often treat thinking like it's a personality trait. You're either smart or you're not, and that's just not how cognition works. Really, truly, many cognitive skills can improve through deliberate practice and training, appropriate instruction. That's why I pride myself in teaching my interns that the way that you instruct is truly going to make or break the outcomes. And repeated engagement with like the challenging tasks, right? It's not just you're not going to improve your cognitive ability by doing it once or twice or maybe even 5 times. You're going to improve by all of these things combined. Deliberate practice. You are actively practicing these skills. You have somebody or something appropriately instructing you, and you're repeating the engagement over and over and over again with a challenging task. Those 3 things together really, truly make cognition. The evidence from cognitive psychology and educational research suggests that strategy, instruction, metacognition, so that's your thinking about your thinking, your ability to think about thinking, and practice can improve problem solving and learning outcomes. Although improvements are often most specific to the skills being trained rather than producing broad increases in intelligence, which is something that I'm really passionate about, because when I first started cognitive training, I was like, ooh, like increase IQ. But like, again, that doesn't actually matter. I can increase your IQ all day, every day. There are ways that we can do that. But does that help you utilize those skills in real life? No. You're just going to have the skill, but if you don't practice it, if you don't have deliberate practice and putting yourself in challenging situations regularly, those skills are going to diminish and your IQ is going to drop anyway. So what does that matter? Some examples of this would be like athletes training movement. So is an athlete just going to stop training because their IQ is really high? No. Musicians training coordination. If you stop using your hands, are you going to be able to utilize the instrument that you're playing? Probably not. Writers training writing skills. So all of these examples, all of these people are training the thing that they're doing, right? Based on their profession. So why wouldn't we train thinking? And that's exactly what I do. I basically train your thinking ability, which is really, really fun and really cool. I think our last little discussion here is more about, living in a time or an age where thinking matters more than memorization. We truly are in a point in our society that memorization doesn't really matter anymore. 20 years ago, knowing information made you valuable, right? You were wise, you were educated. But today, you can ask AI almost anything. So what makes humans more valuable? Well, it's our ability to critically think. AI can't do that. It's just a program. It's just a code. But humans can critically think. We can have meaningful conversations. We can create things. We have judgment. People like to say, oh, I don't judge. Yeah, you do. We have judgment. We have bias, right? We have ethics. What is ethically sound or not? Again, we have communication, meaningful conversations with people. Communication is huge. And communicating with an AI bot is not communication. And we also have adaptability. That's why we've been able to survive so long. And am I saying don't use AI or don't use technology? No, I'm not saying that. Look at me. I'm literally using technology to get this message out to you. So I'm not saying that. But these are things that technology can maybe help increase or, get more readily available to the public. But it's not something that technology or AI can actually do. These are things that humans can do. And I think that's really powerful. These are skills that help us evaluate information, collaborate, and make sound decisions when answers are not straightforward. And honestly, in today's society and in this world, answers are never straightforward. We have to have those conversations to get anywhere, to be honest. So let's reflect a little bit. When was the last time that you changed your mind about something? Not because someone argued with you, but because you learned something new. That right there is thinking. All right. So next week, we are going to be diving into something I think everyone has experienced. Why do incredibly capable people sometimes struggle? We'll talk about hidden barriers, executive functioning a little bit more, opportunity, environment, and why potential alone just is not enough. And remember, growth happens beneath the surface long before it blooms. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep growing. Until next time, lovelies.